Okay, now we are going to discuss the difference between a bilateral contract and a unilateral contract. These are different categories of contracts. So a bilateral contract is a promise in exchange for a promise. A good example would be, $100,000 to act on a TV show. That is the promise or the money in exchange for the promise to engage in behavior. In other words, it's not the behavior you're contracting for, it's the promise to behave in the future. It could also be money in exchange for goods. Most of the contracts that you deal with on a day-to-day basis are promise in exchange for a promise. And it could be a promise to do something or a promise not to do something. In contrast, you have unilateral contracts, which is a promise in exchange for behavior, or promise in exchange for performance. A classic example of a unilateral contract would be if you were to put up a sign for a lost dog and it says, so whoever finds my dog will receive a reward of $200. And so the key difference there is that in most bilateral contracts, the offeror and the offeree are known, whereas there's only two people or two parties involved. Whereas when you have a unilateral contract, it's an offer made to more than one party or multiple parties or unknown parties. It's just whoever should find the dog, they get the reward. And so the key difference that with unilateral contract, which is an offer in exchange for performance, is that it takes completion of performance to have an acceptance. So the classic example of someone painting a house, if you go up, someone says, I offer $100 for someone to paint my house. If you go and buy paint and you start preparing and you're ready to go, you haven't started painting yet, there is no contract because that's called mere preparation. Mere preparation is not an acceptance, okay? So whereas if you then go and start to paint the house, you have essentially begun performance. And at that point, the status is that the offer cannot be revoked. However, there is no contract at this point because the acceptance, again, occurs when performance is completed. Okay, so at that point, the offer can't be taken away. You have to give the party an opportunity to complete the performance. Okay, then once performance is completed, there is an acceptance and there is a contract. Offer, acceptance, consideration on both sides would be the money in exchange for the labor. Okay, so that is unilateral versus bilateral. The key differences between the two is when acceptance occurs and when the offer is no longer revocable.